Hi guys, Mehrnush here from Ross IELTS Academy. I'm here today to talk to you about the latest IELTS speaking questions, the last week's. It is always a good idea to practice different questions and topics before the test. However, you don't need to worry. When we talk to our candidates, many of them tell us that their main concern in speaking is that they don't have a very wide range of vocabulary. Tell you what, it's fine. Not everyone has got the vocabulary to talk about all the familiar and unfamiliar topics. Besides, there is no need to have information about everything so that you can answer all the questions. You need strategies. Okay guys, what we want to do today is to take a look at some of the latest IELTS speaking questions part by part, and I will give you my answers to them. Then I will explain why I gave those answers, analyzing them based on IELTS criteria. Okay, let's get started. Okay guys, in this video we want to take a look at some questions and answers in the first part of IELTS speaking, the latest ones. We have three different topics here. The first one is about your house, the next one is about wildlife, and the last one is about advertisements. First, we read the questions together to see what they're all about. The first topic, the first question says, where do you live? The second question, do you live in a house or an apartment? The third one, where would you prefer to live in the future? Now the second topic, wildlife. The first question says, have you ever learned about wildlife? Where in your country can you find wildlife easily? Did you ever watch advertisements about wildlife? And the third topic, advertisements. The first question here says, do you watch the full advertisement start to finish? Do you like commercial buildings? What type of commercial spaces do you have in your country? Now, what I want you to do is to take your time, think of your own answers to these questions, and then come back to me so that I can give you my own answers and we analyze them based on IELTS criteria. So, take your time. Did you come up with any ideas? Now let's see how we can give a very good answer to these questions, starting with the first topic. The first one was about your house. And the first question says, where do you live? This is my answer. Currently, I live in Toronto, which is known as Canada's largest city. I can say that I do love living here, as first of all, the weather is freezing cold, which is my favorite. Secondly, it brings me many academic and professional opportunities because of its multiculturalism. Now the second question says, do you live in a house or an apartment? And my answer, I have just moved to a new 5-story building near my workplace. Although it is not that spacious, I find it good enough since it is overlooking a breathtaking view of a jungle, which helps me better focus on my work or studies only by looking at it. And the third question, where would you prefer to live in the future? Here is my answer. That is very difficult to answer because I plan to travel to a big number of countries and I haven't decided where I want to stay and have a place of my own. However, I've always had this picture of a house with a balcony near the beach. If I make a fortune in my business, I will definitely buy the house of my dreams very soon. Now let's take a look at my answers to see what I have used in them. In the first question, I was asked to talk about where I live. And I used some collocations, some good vocabulary to give the answer to this question. So first, we just want to look at the collocations and vocabulary in the three answers. In the first one, I used, it brings me opportunities. It means it gives me a good chance. It gives me the opportunity. Multiculturalism. It means the presence of several cultures in one place. In my second answer, I use the word move. For example, I moved to a new house or I moved to a new place. A 5-story building, which means a 5-floor building. My workplace, which means where I work. A spacious house, which means a big house. So this is a very good synonym for big. I have a spacious house. Overlooking. For example, you say my house is overlooking the ocean, the jungle. It means it has a view of the ocean or the jungle. Breathtaking. It means wonderful, fabulous. And in the third question, I was asked to talk about where I prefer to live in the future. First, I use a big number of, for example, a big number of countries, which means a lot of countries, many countries. A place of my own, which means my own house. For example, I like to house a place of my own. It means I want to have my own house. Make a fortune, which means making a lot of money. If I make a fortune, I will buy that house. It means if I make a lot of money, I can buy that house. So here are some collocations or vocabulary that I used in my answers. The next thing that we can look at is the boosters and fillers that you can start your answer with or use in the middle of your answers, because sometimes you don't know what you want to say and you need some time to think of the ideas that you want to develop, so you can use fillers instead of saying pausing all the time. For example, in the first answer, the second sentence, I said, I can say that, and then I gave my answer, the rest of my answer. In the third one, I started my answer like this. That is very difficult to answer because, so I used this phrase, or I used this booster because I didn't know what I should have said, and I needed a few seconds to think of what I wanted to elaborate on. And the last thing, the use of connectives and conjunctions. You should always remember to use some more advanced connectives instead of just using and, so, but, because. For example, in the first answer, I used because of, or as means because. Or we also have some time order words. They help you make some complex grammatical structures, like first of all, secondly, or currently, because we wanted to talk about the time. It means at the moment, now. In the second answer, I used although to show the contrast, or since, which means because, or as. In the third one, I used however to show the contrast again, which is a very good alternative for the word but. Now, if you're ready, let's take a look at the second topic in the first part of this test, which is about wildlife. The first question says, have you ever learned about wildlife? Here's my answer. Unfortunately not. I don't actually have much information about wildlife, nature, or the animals. I even remember that when I was a child, whenever my father wanted to watch documentaries about that, I nagged asking him to play music instead. Now the second question. Where in your country can you find wildlife easily? Here's my answer. Well, I suppose that can be found in almost all the jungles in my city. I have heard that you can find various animal species in these natural areas. However, they are preserved by some governmental or private agencies for the protection of the animals. And the third question. Did you ever watch advertisements about wildlife? Here's my answer. As I am not interested in wildlife, I skip the ads about that. But if I'm not mistaken, there was this advertisement on YouTube about how the global warming is threatening some animals, showing some ways to reduce the detrimental impacts of it. I watched that one to the very end, as it was like an animation with some sound effects, which I found quite interesting. Now let's see what I have used in my answers. First, we start with the collocations and vocabulary marked in red. In the first question, I was asked to talk about if I have learned about wildlife. And I tried to just talk about my own experience that no, my answer was negative, and I just gave some explanation on that. In the second one, I used the word preserve, which means to protect, or I referred to governmental or private agencies. In the third one, I used global warming, or being threatening, or detrimental impacts, which means harmful effects of something. To the very end, it means to the end. Or I find it interesting. I found it interesting. It means it was interesting for me. So you can use some collocations. But what I did here, okay, the first question was easy for me and I gave the answer to that. The second one was asking if, like, where in my country I can find wildlife easily. And the only thing that came to my mind was some jungles. But I knew that this is going to be a very short answer because, as you know, in the first part, yes, the questions are short and you should give some short answers. But your answer should not be very short, like you just give the direct answer and done. You should always make sure to provide explanations and examples. And in the second one, my answer was just jungles. So I kept talking. I just referred to some different areas and how the animals are protected by the agencies and these people. I just kept talking. It was not really my idea or the information I had. And in the third one, I used a strategy. You can also use the same one. Okay, I was asked to say if I ever watch advertisements about wildlife. My answer is no, because I don't like advertisements and, of course, wildlife. But the thing is that I had to just give a longer answer to that. So I decided to talk about the environment so that I can use the collocations related to that topic. So I just went a little off the topic. For example, I decided to talk about an advertisement that I had watched on YouTube, which I hadn't. I just made it up. And just by using this example, I used more collocations like global warming or something threatening something else, detrimental impacts, and then I used more collocations. So these three collocations or vocabulary that I used were related to a topic that I had good words for. And I tried to use that in this one because it was close to this topic. But if you go off the topic, just make sure to go back to the question again at the end. Like I talked about this animation, talking about the environmental issues, but at the end I said yes, I watched this one. So this was one of the advertisements that I watched to the very end because it was interesting. So my answer to this question is yes, I watched this one. So this was about the collocations. Other than that, you can use some fillers and boosters. For example, in my first answer, I started it saying unfortunately not, instead of just saying no. I'm afraid not. Unfortunately not. Or I even remember that because I wanted to refer to a past memory, past experience. In the second one, I have heard that, or well, I suppose, I think. And in the third one, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm not wrong, and then I gave my answer. And finally, how I use the connectives or conjunctions. For example, in the second answer, I used however to show the contrast instead of using but. In the third answer, I started it using as, which is a good alternative for the word because. And once again, the same word as in the last part of my answer. So you can do the same thing. And now moving on to the third topic. Now you can just look at your own answers and my answers and compare them and try to use the techniques or the collocations that I'm using because it really helps you. So the first question about the topic advertisement says, do you watch the full advertisement start to finish? Here's my answer. Start to finish? Not really. In my idea, some ads are there to waste your time. I'd rather listen to the advertisements while I'm catching up on my chores at home or to only watch some parts of it. The second question says, do you like commercial buildings? Here's my answer. Even though I'm not an expert in architecture or construction, I find some commercial buildings or shopping centers very interesting. I fancy buying one in the next few years and set up my own business there. And the third question, what type of commercial spaces do you have in your country? This is my answer. Well, I don't really know a lot about the city as I don't go out very often, but I have seen a huge shopping mall nearby. A big number of people do their shopping there, which makes it one of the most successful businesses around. I think their business is booming. Other than that, I don't know any other commercial space. So, let's look at my first answer, and of course I want to start with the vocabulary and collocations, the ones in red. In the first one, I was asked to talk about if I watched the full advertisement. To start my answer, I said start to finish. I repeated the question because it's just another way to think of what you want to say. I use some good vocabulary here. The first one is waste your time. Something wastes your time. The next one, catch up on something. It means to do something that you have not recently been able to do. So you have to catch up on it. You have to take care of it or do it. The second answer, I use the word architecture, construction, which means to build something. I find it interesting. It means it is interesting for me. And the last one, set up my own business. It's another term for start my own business, a collocation. And the last answer, a huge shopping mall, which means a very big shopping mall. A big number of people. It means a lot of people, many people. Their business is booming. It's a very good collocation you can use to talk about very fast and rapid sales growth and big success in a business. Now, to look at the fillers and boosters I have used. For example, in the first one, I started my answer saying start to finish, not really, in my idea, and then I kept talking. In the second one, I fancy buying. It means I like, I enjoy, I do love. In the third answer, I started my answer saying, well, I don't really know a lot about the city. And then, so I said that I have no information, but there is something that I can talk about. And I think I talked about my own idea. Other than that, you can use some connectives as I have used. For example, in the second answer, even though I'm not an expert, I find some commercial buildings interesting. So I'm showing a contrast here. Or the last one, but, as, or other than that. Other than that is a synonym for besides, or when you want to add more information, like and. Now, as the last thing, I want to talk about the strategy that I have applied here. Okay, the first question, I had something to say, like if I watched the full advertisement, of course not, and then I gave explanations. So you should always remember that even though your answers in the first part should be short, you should always give explanations and examples for that. In the second one, however, the second question, I had nothing to say. Do you like commercial buildings? I have no idea. So instead, I just tried to talk about the business. Like I said, I want to set up my own business. Of course, I have no dream like that. I don't want to have my own business in the next few years. But I only used this collocation because I wanted to get a better score in my lexical resource. And the third one, the type of commercial spaces in my country. And in that one, I just explained about some, like, I'm not familiar, I don't know much about the city, but here are the things that I have seen or I have heard of. So always keep talking. You say something, give explanations and examples on that. This is very important. Very well, guys. Just like what we did today, you can look for speaking questions, give your own answers to them, record yourself, and then analyze your answers. If you want to be evaluated by us, Book an online speaking mock test with our examiners. It will make a big difference, trust me. In the next videos, we will work on the next parts. I wish you best of luck and see you very soon.